Okay, so the halachot of the 9 days, for some reason, it's a subject that the question comes up very, very, I get a lot of questions in regards to the 9 days for some reason, and every rabbi does, and I think the reason is because there is so many different levels in the avelut that we do for the khurban. We get confused, what's mutar now, what's mutar this year, what's mutar next year. So I want to present it in a way to make it as simple as possible. Okay? I mean, as simple as possible. We have 5 levels that of khumrah. There's the 3 weeks, and then it goes into the 9 days. After the 9 days, you have Shavua Shehalbo. After Shavua Shechalbo, there's Erev Tisha B'Av, and then there's Tisha B'Av itself. That's the 5 levels of stringencies. During the 3 weeks, it's very simple. It's a time that it's Midat Adin, and we stay away from anything of danger. And we don't say the Bracha of Shechianu because it's not an auspicious time. So, the 3 weeks we're not going to discuss today. It doesn't have so many ramifications. We don't get married during that time as well, according to many poskim. But the 9 days is what we're going to discuss this now, because the 9 days is what we are in. We just started the 9 days. And this year, according to most poskim, we don't have Shavua Shechal Bo Tisha B'Av. We don't have the week that Tisha B'Av fell in, right? Because since Tisha B'Av is on Shabbat, the Shulchan Aruch brings 2 opinions, and he seems to be posek like the opinion that there is no Shavua Shechal Bo this year. So we're basically left with the 9 days. What halachot are particular to the 9 days? So there's a Mishnah, there's Gemara in Halacha, and then there's Minhag. So we'll go one by one. What is written in the Mishnah regarding the 9 days? What is the principle that you have to guide yourself these 9 days? It doesn't make a difference what iddah you're from. The answer is like this. It says in the Mishnah, Mi shenichnas av mima'atin besimcha. Once Chodesh Av enters, we diminish in simcha. Diminishing in simcha has different manifestations that the Mishnah brings. And we'll go one by one. Number 1 is not necessarily in order the Mishnah, but number 1 we'll talk about what does just mi'ud besimcha in general mean? Diminishing in simcha. Which means one of the things that some poskim bring is not to be as making as many jokes this week as you normally would. Just tone it down a little bit. Mima'atin besimcha. Doesn't mean you have to walk around totally depressed, but it has to mean that you have to remember we are in a time of avilut. It's like Rabbi Tzyon Bashod writes, it's like the avilut of Shloshim. He writes that regarding Shavua Shechalbo, but the concept of it's not the avilut of the day, that's Tisha B'Av. That's like a person Chas v'Shalom is an avel. But it's an avilut of, let's say, Shloshim. You don't joke around. Many poskim say to go to an amusement park during this time, it's not appropriate for people to go to amusement parks during this time of Tishat Yamim, of the 9 days. Once again, even though the Sepharadim don't follow Shavua Shechalbo, but there is a basic halacha of Mi shenichnas av mima'atin besimcha. Same thing is to have a party during these days. A person wants to have a major birthday party. That's not the proper thing. Now, somebody asked me the following. He wants to make a Chanukah Tabayit this week. So what would be by a Chanukah Tabayit? The truth is, you could have made a Chanukah Tabayit a long time ago. But it depends what you consider a Chanukah Tabayit. If a Chanukah Tabayit is 10 men sitting together saying a tikkun for the house and then having a few cashews out on the table, that's fine. Because that's a tikkun of Torah. And that can be done anytime, even if you could have done it beforehand. But if it's the Sefer Chazon Ovadia, Rav Ovadia Yosef actually discusses, it says Chanukah Tabayit is allowed. Whereas if it's going to be that you're going to invite all your friends, you're going to make a party, you say, oh, it's a mitzvah, why not? That's not appropriate during this time. You could have done it another time. You're just moving, you're not supposed to move into us during the 9 days. So it's just because you didn't do it beforehand. Furthermore, let's say you're making a seudat pereda, which means that your friend is leaving and you want to make a little bit of gathering. That's also a mitzvah. At it's the end of the zman by a lot of yeshivot, and that's the last time that they can make a seudah for their friend leaving. So seudat pereda, it would also be allowed. I'm reading over here. I have a lot of halachot that I'm taking from the Sefer Shoshanat Yisrael based on the psakim of Rav Shlomo Miller. And once again, when we think that for Sepharadim, it's a little bit different. I'll mention it. The same thing too, but this week, Monday night, is the Hilulah of the Arizal, right? Hey Av, it's the Hilulah of the Arizal. So if somebody wants to make a Seudat Hilulah, Tzorach Mitzvah, that would be allowed. Because once again, it's not a party. If you are going to make it to a party, that's something else. You're doing it as a Seudat Mitzvah and a Seudah for Kiddushin. Okay, another thing is that you diminish in your business-wise. You don't enter new ventures. Masao matan shel simcha. The Bet Yosef already discusses that there are different levels. What does that mean, masao matan shel simcha? And the Bet Yosef writes that lehalacha nowadays, what we do in order to make a living is allowed. And nowadays everything basically is considered making a living. So basically everything that we do nowadays is allowed. But if you want to enter a major venture, a major partnership, it's better to wait till after Tisha B'Av. Now, once again, it all depends on the nature of the business. And if the business is that you're going to lose such a deal or whatever, that's something different. But if it's like entering new ventures to try to get to a new level, that should be that should be till after Tisha B'Av. Now, the concept of Masao Matan Shel Simcha is also not buying new luxury things. So if you want to buy your new car now, it's not appropriate. The Igrot Moshe Chelek Gimel of Orachaim Siman Peh says that buying a new car now is forbidden, but if you need it for work, you need a delivery truck, that's going to be allowed, because once again, it's a basic business expense. Leasing a car, over here it's brought down by the Psakim of Rav Shlomo Miller, is permitted. Leasing a car would be permitted, because when a person is leasing a car, basically he's not getting tremendous simcha. It's not that he bought an item; he's leasing it. Nowadays, different people every single year they try to lease a different fancy car. I don't know, maybe if you think you get tremendous simcha from it, you should avoid it. But basic leasing car would be
So you get more simcha
permitted.
from leasing than from buying.
Yeah.
You're buying, you're stuck with it.
You're stuck with it. That's a good point. That's a good point.
Today with leasing.
Yeah, if a person feels that he gets more simcha, it should be machmir. If it's like something special for him, it's a special car for him. Now, buying a house, if you don't have a place where to live, so once again, that's called a basic necessity. That's one thing. But let's say you're just closing in on a property now. You should try to avoid closing during this week, even if the closing doesn't. This was another question I was asked this week. Even the closing doesn't require any particular action on your part. The fact that the deal is closing, there's an amount of simcha, and if you're able to push the closing off till after Tisha B'Av, that would also be appropriate. That would also be that's what it would be. But let's say you're just entering a contract, you're entering escrow, or you're signing a contract, that's not a problem, because you're not doing the final action of closing of the simcha, right? So anything to do with preparing for a wedding that is going to bring tremendous simcha, that's written in the Mishnah as well. Masao matan shel simcha or binyan shel simcha. That also has to be avoided. So buying all different things for bar mitzvah or whatever else, if you can keep it till afterwards, that's also okay. Now if it's basic items, like you're just buying some paper plates that it's not going to bring you so much simcha, that's okay. And we're going to see that this is the theme as we go along. Buying different items for the house. For example, somebody wants to buy a new dining room set that should be avoided during the 9 days. Let's say his oven is broken, he needs to buy a new oven. That's a basic necessity. That's allowed during the 9 days. A small microwave oven or a toaster, that would be allowed. But buying important kiddim that bring a person simcha, it should be avoided. Also, what does binyan shel simcha mean? Now let's go to the next category. Building. What is called building of simcha? anything that is considered that he is making a big beautifying the place, that would be forbidden. So, for example, painting. Why did a person's painting? He freshens up the place, and usually that's a very good time for them to paint now during the 9 days. Bi'alacha, a person should avoid painting during the 9 days. Whereas if it's doing basic framing work or basic drywalling work, that is going to be allowed. Now, if you have a contractor, this is an important point. You have a contractor that works on his own. He has to get the job done by a certain time. Doesn't matter if he works during the 9 days or if he works afterwards, with double staff. But it's a contractor. Could he work during the 9 days? So we learned, but in Shabbat, we learned that even if you have a non-Jewish contractor, he shouldn't work on Shabbat. As a matter of fact, the Kollel's building a building over here on Pico between Shenandoah and Bedford. You'll see we have a sign up there. No construction is being done here on Shabbat and Yom Tov. So people understand that there's no marita ayin whatsoever, even if the non-Jews are the workers. But we are, and we're not paying them per hour, and they're paying on their own. It's allowed. So it's not allowed. So why? Because there's marita ayin. There's people who are suspicious that there might be work being done. But during the 9 days, we're not machmir on a non-Jewish contractor. So if you have a non-Jewish contractor, he would be allowed to work. If you want to avoid it, tavu alav bracha. But a non-Jewish worker would be allowed to keep on building your property. But if you yourself are paying per hour, that's the same thing as you doing molding and all those type of things during the 9 days. It should be avoided. Same thing, wallpaper. Whoever does that nowadays, or landscaping. Landscaping is a big question because on one hand, there's a lot of basic work that has to be done for landscaping. That is just in order to keep the property going. So watering and pruning, all of that is permitted. But if you want to add on new bushes and making it more expansive and more beautiful, that should be avoided during the 9 days because that's called a binyan. That's called a binyan shel simcha. Okay, we're going to go further in basar v'yayin, but anybody who has to leave, you're welcome to go. People have schedules. I don't take it personally at all, but I'm going to continue in 2 more subjects. And the next one is going to be meat and wine. Now, meat and wine is not written in the Gemara. In the Gemara, in the Mishnah, it's written that seudat mafseket, one does not have meat. Anybody who has meat and wine during seudat mafseket, he's not going to be zochen roeh the binyan Yerushalayim. And indeed, there are communities, the Teimanim in particular, that eat meat and drink wine during the 9 days. And during Seudat HaMafseket, they don't have meat and wine. However, the minhag of the Sepharadim and the minhag of the Ashkenazim universally is to abstain from meat and wine during the 9 days. Because that is a manifestation of mima'atin besimcha. We minimize simcha. Let me give you an example. If somebody is going to engage in the same type of high level foods, he's just going to always imagine you're going to take your friend out, you're going to say, I'm going to bring you out for a lasagna. It's not the same thing. You bring him for a steak, you bring him something important. That's called mima'atin besimcha. And I want to bring you an example that it's only a minhag because in the city of Saloniki, and the Shulchan Gavoa says that they used to have wine. Was it the Shulchan Gavoa? One of the sources writes that they used to have wine. So the minhag in certain Greek communities is that they would abstain from meat, they would have wine. So that's an example that it's only a davar shel that's only a minhag. So it's a minhag of not having meat and wine during the night. We abstain. Most Sepharadim explain. Shulchan Aruch brings different opinions, but the halacha we abstain during the 9 days of having meat and wine. Okay, and this includes what includes meat, not anything vegetarian. Anything that's meat, chicken also we abstain from. However, wine includes also grape juice, but Rabbi Tzina Bashol says other alcoholic beverages it doesn't include it, and he has a whole explanation that the reason why we abstain meat and wine during these days is to show more of during the time of the Bet HaMikdash they would bring korbanot of meat and then they would be makriv nesachim. So it's a remember of Churban Bet HaMikdash. But the simple explanation is that wine brings a special type of simcha. alcoholic beverages, there was never a minhag to abstain from. Again, if it was a halacha written in the Mishnah, it could be we would abstain from everything. But it's a minhag. Minhag is wine and not alcoholic beverages. Grape juice, on the other hand, is always treated like wine. It's treated wine for kiddush, and therefore it's treated wine. We stay away, even though it doesn't bring tremendous simcha. But it's part of the package deal of refraining from wine, which means that during the 9 days, also, if you have a dish that has wine in it, there's certain types of ices, for example, that are made out of grape juice, or certain type of sorbets that have wine in it, and you taste the wine, you shouldn't have that during the 9 days. You shouldn't have that during the 9 days. But let's say you have a meat pot that you cook something. That's fine. That's something fine because that's not the meat itself. And even if it was ben yomo and it was charif or whatever else you want to say, that would be permitted during the 9 days. I'm not going to get into the subject of siyum. That's a whole different subject because there are some places, for example, there are some camps that they think that for the children it's very difficult to abstain during the 9 days, so they have a siyum every day. Somebody makes a completion of a masechta, so it's like a sudat mitzvah now that they would be able to have to have meat. Unfortunately, this halacha got abused. I heard that there are restaurants in the East Coast, God forbid, that they have some person that they pay there that he finishes a masechta and he's there every half hour, so people coming in that they want to order ribs, they can have a guy doing a masechta. What connection does he have to them? What is it? No simcha over there, but they can't stay away from ribs for too long. That's, I guess, the theory is. Yes?
Does a person who owns a meat store?
That's an excellent question. There are restaurants that are open. Rav Ovadia Yosef has a tshuva about it, but in America it's a little bit different. It could be that the restaurants that are open for the non-Jewish customers. It could be the restaurants open for non-Jewish customers. You have to remember this is a minhag. Or maybe it's open for the teimanim. Maybe there's enough business. I don't think, you have to know who eats out so much. But they definitely have a fish menu. But sometimes where it's for non-Jewish customers, that's why they would remain open in that regard. Okay, and one last thing we're going to speak about is washing during the 9 days. Washing during the 9 days. In Halachot, the Shulchan Aruch brings two opinions: whether one is allowed to wash during the 9 days and just refrain from Shavua Shechal Bo Tisha B'Av, which wouldn't apply nowadays, this year, or all of 9 days. LeHalacha, most Sephardic poskim are lenient for Shavua Shechal Bo. That means this year one would be able to wash. However, there are those who are machmir for the 9 days. There are Moroccan communities that are machmir for the 9 days. And washing, you have to understand also what the concept of washing. Washing doesn't mean you have to go around and smell, which is a misconception. Rechitza means, once again, a manifestation of mi'ut simcha, of diminishing simcha, and mi'ut ta'anug, and a diminishing of pleasure. A diminishing of pleasure, whenever Hachamim talk about taking showers, was hot showers. Was that you would go into a bathhouse and you would take a hot shower. As a matter of fact, the Sefer Shulchan Gavua brings in Saloniki, the minhag was that even on the 8th of Av, people would go swimming in the river. People would go swimming in the river, which means because that wasn't the manifestation, that wasn't simcha, that was just like washing off. And the Sefer Gedulat Elisha also brings in Baghdad that was also a similar custom that people would wash in cold water. So washing in cold water, or even warm water, which is not just to get the bite of the cold off, with as much shampoo as you want, is not what is forbidden during the 9 days. It's taking a hot shower. Pshuto k'mashmo. So those who are machmir during the 9 days, it's taking a shower. And that is, because it became so hard for people, they started saying, well, we can't do the whole thing, so let's just be lenient. If you follow what the concept of the halacha is, that's what it is. Diminishing from simcha and ta'anug. What about swimming lessons nowadays? Because this brings us to swimming, and this I'm going to finish. Me'ikar adin, if the washing would be permitted, so you'd be allowed to swim also, because the reason why you're not allowed to swim during the 9 days, it's not because of sakana, because let's say it's a baby pool. Let's say there's no sakana in ocean is something you should stay away during the 9 days, even for Sepharadim. even if you're allowed to wash. The ocean is a dangerous place. Rav Vosner discusses this. He doesn't like it even it could be, if I'm not mistaken, even during the 3 weeks. But we're makel during the 3 weeks. But the 9 days, it's something that there's always tragedies. Lo Aleinu, this year also there's tragedies in water parks and the like. But during the 9 days is a time where if you say there's no sakana, you would be allowed to swim. However, this is where there's a fine difference. It's definitely a manifestation of extra simcha. So the minhag of Am Yisrael was to stay away from water activities, especially during the 9 days. They say this in the name of Rav Moshe Feinstein, and they say this as well, that this is what the minhag of most of the communities in Am Yisrael, stay away from swimming during the 9 days. Now, if it's a child who doesn't know how to swim and he's getting swimming lessons, there's room to be lenient. Once again, because you're allowed, especially for Sepharadim, you're allowed to wash during the 9 days. And even for Ashkenazim, it's not clear if going in cold water is called a manifestation of simcha. So Me'ikar Adin would be allowed. Sefer Kovetz Halachot, or Psakim Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky brings that it's not ra'ui for older people to swim or even to take swimming lessons during the 9 days, but it seems to be for children, and the Shatat Sorech poskim say that it could be allowed as long as you take extra precaution of safety. But these are things that are more dependent on what the general minhag of Klal Yisrael was. So let's just recap. Mishenichnas av mima'atin besimcha. We diminish in simcha. We diminish in jokes. We diminish in parties. We diminish in building. We diminish in even new business ventures and new acquisitions. And we also diminish in the way we eat. And we also diminish in the activities that we do. Chazaku Baruch.